We are talking with Dr. Justin Sanchez from the Biological Technologies Office at DARPA. Before the show, somebody in the chat room said there's a phrase, DARPA hard. When something is virtually impossible, they say it's DARPA hard. You're going to have to send this one to DARPA. And I think you've picked a DARPA hard thing to do. How far have we gone, Dr. Sanchez, in using I've seen, I think, monkeys controlling things with their minds. Is that right?
Yeah, so monkeys have done it, but we've also had humans control prosthetic limbs just by thinking about it. And they can have near natural control, again, of artificial limbs. And if you just go on the web and look up DARPA and prosthetic limbs, you'll be able to see some of those videos. But a quick story on how this came about and how fast it happened. One of the interesting things, before I was at DARPA, again, I was academic research and I actually worked on the first brain-machine interface program, again, as a scientist on that program. And this was in the early 2000s, so like 2001, 2002. And I remember going to the kickoff meeting for that project and people saying there that it would be 50 years before humans would have a direct brain implant and be able to control a prosthetic limb just by thinking about it. And back to that kind of the DARPA approach, or how DARPA deals with hard kinds of challenges, we can accelerate. And over a course of 5 or 6 years, we actually made that happen.
Is this guy, we're watching a video of a guy controlling an arm. There's no physical control going on here. He's thinking pick up and it picks it up. He's thinking open the hand. So
not in this example, but if you actually look up Jan Sherman and DARPA revolutionizing prosthetics.
Okay.
You may be able to find some of the videos online for that. Yeah. But again, there's great some great clips of her actually controlling the prosthetic limb.
And this is from just a couple of months ago. Solely with her mind. She's a paraplegic, has no use of her limbs.
Yeah, that's Jan right there.
Yeah. In fact, it looks like she uses a chin stick to do a lot of the work she does. Was this a 60 Minutes piece? I think it was.
Yeah, there was a 60 Minutes piece on this. And, quite remarkable. Yeah, she's an amazing person.
What a breakthrough, though, for her to. I think of things like cochlear implants. The advances we're making now are just truly remarkable. And it all comes with understanding something that is so hard for us to observe. The mind observing the mind is quite a challenge.
Could you, Justin, have a sort of a feedback loop or sensory loop where the electrodes don't just read the intent of the brain, but send back signals in parallel where you could actually feel it, right? So you could have a prosthetic arm and feel hot, cold.
Yeah, so you can actually do those kinds of things. Jan did not have a version of the system where she could feel it, but this is closing that loop. So not only having the movement part, but also the feeling part of it. That's one of the last milestones to be achieved on the revolutionizing prosthetics program at the agency.
Wow.
So yeah, again,
take it one step further. Have somebody else feel it. I'm sorry, interrupted. Go ahead.
Wait a minute. Is she controlling this with her mind?
Yep, there's an example of her. Those signals are coming straight out of her head and into that robotic arm and controlling that robotic arm to move.
How hard is this for her to learn?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So she has near natural control. So the moment that we turned it on, she was able to control that arm system. And the reason we're able to do that is because of the exquisite understanding of how the motor system of the brain works. So kind of back to that President's Brain Initiative there, one of our goals is to learn as much as we can about the function of the brain, but then apply it to very useful kinds of everyday life activities. That's really where we're headed. So we just don't want to observe the brain. We want to use it to do something useful.
What are the tools you use to figure out where the loci of this are and how it's working? I mean, what do you do? Do you probe the brain?
Yeah. So she'll have an fMRI. If you can have one, you can localize where in her brain those signals are emanating from.
She's feeding herself.
Yes. So again, interesting comment on this. Jan has told me that one of her primary motivations for this was just to feed herself chocolate again. And again, for somebody who's paralyzed, this makes all of the difference in the world, right? You have that function taken away from you, and then to think that you could potentially get it back, it's life-changing, it's transformative.
Let's go back to this computer display, because I have a feeling that has something to do with the brain waves and the impulses. Let me jump to that.
Yeah, right there. So remember back when we were talking, being able to process signals just like this was really a challenge in the early 2000s. Again, there's very few people that had hardware systems that could process this kind of information. And just to give you a little bit of a reference here, if you just kind of look at those little purple lines there, those magenta lines, every time you see one of those lines, that's one neuron firing.
Okay.
And it's the firing of those neurons which contains the information about, I want to move in this direction, or I want to move in another direction, or I want to open my hand, or I want to close my hand. So what needs to go on the actual computers, we need to take those squiggly lines and translate them into control commands for the limb. And that's the really hard part. And we have mathematicians and electrical engineers and really, really smart people trying to figure that out.